Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to another installment of A Rebel Without Applause, coming to you, at least on this side of this conversation, from my television studio apartment right here in the Wood of the Holly. By that, I mean Hollywood. And on the other side of this conversation, across two continents and an ocean, coming to you from the Western cultural capital of Ukraine, by that I mean Lviv, is Andriana Zmysla. How are you? And thank you for joining with me on my podcast. I really appreciate it.
Hello, Bill. Thank you for having me in your show, and I would be happy to share my story.
Well, let's start with your story. You grew up, I believe, in Lviv, in Western Ukraine. That's where you've lived your whole life. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I'm born and raised in Western Ukraine, in the city of Lviv.
And I've heard this before, and you mentioned it a second ago. But Lviv is really considered sort of the cultural heart of Ukraine, in art and history and its own language and identity. Is that correct? Am I right about that? Is that correct?
Yes, Lviv is the cultural capital of Ukraine. That's because for many years, Lviv at first was under Austro-Hungarian Empire and
Right.
was influenced by that state. And then after it moved under to the Polish rule, and when most of Ukraine and western part of Ukraine was at the same time under Russian Empire. And if to compare western part and eastern part, when western part of Ukraine was Austro-Hungarian and Polish rule, it somewhat kept still independence, and Polish and Austro-Hungarian people, they allowed Ukrainians to still use the language and to stick to our own culture. And Russian Empire, they totally banned Ukrainian culture and banned Ukrainian language. That's why we see this huge difference now, and that's the card that Russians are trying to play in this war.
Now, how much of this war do you think is really an expression of the Russian people's will, and how much of it do you think is about the incredible insanity of Putin?
I think, first of all, the reason why they invaded is all in the one person's head. That is Putin. He constantly repeats that Ukraine doesn't exist and Ukraine as a nation doesn't exist. It is just the territory that needs to join Russia and be within the border of Russia. And although eastern parts of Ukraine are is Russian speaking, it doesn't mean that culturally and politically they want to be part of Russia. And the original message of his speech, of Putin's speech on February 24th, that he wants to denazify Ukraine, was very wrong message to people in the East, because most nationalists here live in Western Ukraine, not in Eastern Ukraine, and nationalism is something very unknown for Eastern parts of Ukraine. They were neutral, but never very nationalistic. So I don't think they understand the Putin's intentions and why he did it. And the way he did it was very rude, was very sudden. And obviously, if someone is very rude to you, you will fight back. You will never let a person to your house and to your life. So I think this is the big mistake.
Now, one of the misconceptions that I think a lot of people where I live have is that this is a brand new war, when in fact, this thing has been going on for, let's see, 6, 8 years in terms of
Yes.
what happened in the Crimea and then on the eastern edge of this country. So this isn't really the beginning of a war, it's an expansion of a war, in my view.
Yeah, we've been on this. When foreigners say the war started for us back in 2014 when they annexed Crimea, and some parts of Luhansk and Donetsk Oblast back in 2014. Yes, it was very sudden. Our armed forces were not prepared to fight back. Our leadership didn't manage to take timely decisions to fight back. But during the last 8 years, we've got much aid and military aid, including from the United States and from many Western countries. And I myself was working 5 years on the Yavoriv training base, military training base, together with the US military instructor, and they were providing training to the Ukrainian troops and according to the NATO standards. So I think that the way the reason why Ukrainian army shows such incredible results right now is because they've trained with US instructors, and they participated in many international military trainings.
And what was that experience like for you? As I imagine you were an interpreter, a translator between.
Yeah, I started as an interpreter I worked with US public and then
you worked with US public, it got blank, US public affairs
team, US military public affairs team. And then I became their assistant, and then I worked also with a Canadian mission on ground as an communications assistant.
And what was that relationship? What was that like between the US and the Ukrainian soldiers? I mean, did they get along? Was it helpful? Did US soldiers really know that much more? I'm curious what that experience was like.
Yeah, they got very well along together. I think not only American or other troops were training Ukrainians, but also they were trying to understand and see the experience of Ukrainian troops, because during all the past 8 years, Ukrainian troops were fighting in the east, so they had a real combat experience. So it was this mutual learning and mutual integration of NATO standards based on experience of the Americans in Afghanistan and Iraq, and also based on Ukrainian experience of Ukrainian troops in the East. So I think that was a very beneficial cooperation.
Right. Now, according to the video that I see, and I'm reading this stuff every day, trying to get as much information I can, it looks to me like the Russians are getting destroyed in Ukraine. They're doing a lot of damage by missiles, but I get the impression they don't really want to fight battles. They just want to throw bombs. And when they do, they're getting, they're suffering, they're losing. Am I correct? Am I off base with that assumption?
Yes, you're totally correct. There are, as we think, several reasons for why they are losing. First of all, it all started for them as the military operation that would last 3 or 4 days. So I think they thought that they would seize Kyiv in 3 or 4 days after war, and it would be as easy to do it as it was back in 2014 in Crimea and parts of Donetsk and Luhansk Oblast. I think they didn't have any strategy how to fight in Ukraine, and how to react in case of Ukrainians fight back. Russian soldiers were told that they were going to Ukraine like for a few days, and no one prepared them for being here more than 1 month already. Their weapons and is very outdated. And the key, the most important is they are not motivated to fight, because I think when you defend yourself, you are much more conducting offensive activities or operation.
You're much more motivated as a defender than, of course, an attacker,
Yes.
especially in a foreign land. You know, when this first happened, the thing that I thought of originally was, I felt that Putin and the Russians had stepped into their own destruction, honestly. But I couldn't help but think of what happened in 1918 or 17, when the Tsar's Russian army basically left the battlefield. They voted with their feet and returned home. And next thing you know, there was a revolution. And it seems to me that this is maybe repeating itself for the Russians. I'm not sure. I don't know, but it feels that way to me.
Yeah, it does. And don't forget about sanctions, European sanctions, and sanctions from many Western countries. They are trying to pressure Russia and to completely destroy the economy of Russia. So I imagine if I would be a Russian soldier, I would just go back to my family, to my relatives, and when the prices are very high, when I don't have a salary, there are rumors that Russian soldiers they don't pay them. That's why we see all these atrocities there here in Ukraine, because their leadership they don't pay their soldiers, but they allow to do all these atrocities as a compensation for not giving them money. And yeah, if I would go back to my family and have nothing to tell them, and don't have any money to buy anything, and see see the country being the price is so high, I mean, I would ask myself why I'm doing it. I mean, what results does it bring?
Right. And now you're helping journalists get into the country and find their way to the story. Talk to me about what you're doing, and how, if indeed an accurate message of what's going on is really getting out.
Yes, I'm currently working with New York Times in Lviv, and I'm trying to find ideas for stories for them, and to show the world and Americans the daily routine in Ukraine, how first of all, how people, civilians, because it's not only Ukrainian armed forces that fight Russia back, it's with the support of many civilians. They are able to do it, and we have very many humanitarian missions here, people who just gave up their jobs and do stuff like they do army nets. They prepare food for the soldiers who are at the front line, and refugees, people who volunteer to help refugees, to find housing for refugees, and food for refugees, because obviously, if I'm not mistaken, 4 million of Ukrainians went abroad, but 6 millions of Ukrainians are still considered to be internally displaced, and they mostly come to Western Ukraine. So we are trying to as being relatively safe part of Ukraine. We are trying to accommodate them and for them to feel welcomed here. And those are many people from Mariupol, Kherson, Sumy, Chernihiv, all the cities that have been heavily bombed, and people lost their houses and basically all the life they had before February 24th. So together with reporters on ground, we are trying to show both the military side of the war and the human side of the war by telling all these stories.
There was another dimension to this struggle that I was reading about that's always interested me, and that is the people that are in some of these cities that are occupied, and their nonviolent their nonviolent opposition to the Russian occupiers, and how they're frustrating just the basic occupied administration of some of these places. That seems to me, I mean, even if the Russians were to actually occupy and control some of these, these cities, it still feels to me like it would be a futile and defeating exercise, because they would never, ever have any cooperation with the citizenry.
I think they just, at this point, trying to get more territory. They don't care about people, about civilians, and then they shoot at people. I think the Russian government and Putin, they clearly understand that they are losing, and but the Russian people are so much brainwashed and so much believe in the success of this war, or as they say, military operation, that Putin, together with his puppets, is trying to make any result of the war. I mean, and this they don't care about the price of the potential victory or the result. They're just trying to show or to bring something on plate to their people, to show that at least they succeeded in some part of Ukraine. And I've been hearing thoughts for the last few days that 9th of May is a victory day in Russia. It's very important celebration for Russians. That's why they regrouped and moved the majority of troops to eastern Ukraine, and they will do everything possible to conquer the administrative borders, at least of Luhansk and Donetsk region, just to basically have something to say on the parade in Moscow on the 9th of May.
Which is the anniversary of the surrender of Germany, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, do you think that there's a pathway to a negotiated end to this war with Russian soldiers holding these territories?
I do not believe that peace talks will bring any results, because the demands that Russia puts are not fulfillable for Ukrainians. And in terms of being NATO neutral country, yes, our government is considering this. However, there are other demands, such as I think there will be 15 countries, including I think United States and Great Britain, that will guarantee our security. But among these 15 countries is Russia and China, and people are very frustrated of that, because how Russia, our enemy, basically the country that invaded us, can guarantee our security. And the second paragraph of this draft document that I personally don't agree with and I don't like, that Ukraine will not be allowed to join any military or political union and will not be able. Our army will not be able to take part in any international military trainings. But me, as no one else, I know, because I've worked hand in hand with both troops, Ukrainian and Americans. As I said before, that's why we keep winning, because we've been trained by Western partners, and only our own armed forces can guarantee us the best security. And if they stop training and stop participating and cooperating with the NATO member armies, I mean, Russia will sooner or later invade us again, and we will not be able to fight back. That's why, and after Bucha atrocities and atrocities done by Russians, I think Ukrainian people are not ready to any compromises anymore with Russia.
So we're looking at a long struggle then, basically.
That's what they say, that this war is not going to end. Not going to end soon. Some people say about a month, and even government representatives, they say about years.
Well, I'm not sure if I said this before we got cut off or not, but all I could think of is what happened in 1918 when the Russian army just left the Eastern Front opposite the Germans and voted with their feet, as Lenin said, and came back and deposed the czars, and there was a revolution. Somehow I think that that's a distinct possibility this time around. I hope so. I don't know.
I think that might be the possibility when the Russian economy is completely destroyed. They don't have, as they say, what to eat, and Russian people will go on the streets and, demand a better life. But they are so much brainwashed, and they so much believe in the success of this war, and they hate Ukrainians so much for having better life standards, better life. So many experts even doubt that that will help. And if it will be help, it's in a long-term perspective, because sanctions, they don't work. They don't destroy economy in one day. It takes time, month, or maybe a year to destroy the economy. And all this time we will have to fight back and lose, unfortunately, our people.
So tragic. Do you have brothers?
Sorry?
Do you have brothers that are fighting or relatives?
No.
Yeah. What were you doing before all this happened?
I worked as a communications assistant to the Canadian military mission in Ukraine.
Oh, okay. So you've been part of this liaison with
Yes.
foreign armies and military.
Yeah.
Ukraine was not a member of NATO when this started. And to me, what's most intimidating to the Russians is that the Ukraine is reaching towards freedom and prosperity, and Russia is kind of collapsing unto itself around the dictatorship of Putin. And when you have an authoritarian regime next to like an explosion of freedom, the authoritarians just have to crush it. They can't abide by it. And to me, that's what it feels like. People, enlightened Ukrainians, aren't vacationing in Moscow. They're going to Warsaw, Berlin, Paris, the United States. I mean, this is like water flowing downhill towards freedom and prosperity. And so to me, it's really not, I mean, we hear about the NATO and all this, and it's part of it, but at its core, it feels like it's something deeper to me than just military. It's about reaching for freedom.
Yes, you're right. It's the basic human right is to be free, right? And Russians, I've never lived in Russia. I don't think I've met many Russians in my life, but I keep hearing stories from people who lived in Russia and met Russians. They are the way, I mean, even if you talk to them, they are not free of what they do, of expressing their opinion, because they are so much are told what to do, what to say, and just this freedom is not the freedom is not the inherent trait of Russians, whether it is of Ukrainians, and because we were always fighting back for our independence throughout history, and we were always trying to make better life around ourselves, to experience life, to go, I don't know, to experience other cultures. We are very open people, and those who, I mean, people who, foreigners and Americans who visited Ukraine, they know what I'm talking about. And this is not the case about Russians. So I think this is the main difference. And I think that Putin has very bad analysts and strategists, because they could find out all this before they started war, you know?
Right.
But they didn't care even to read or to do their basic analysis, how Ukrainian nation changed, especially during the past 8 years.
And what's amazing to me as is your president, Zelensky, this Jewish comedian. I'm very proud because I am also a Jewish comedian. It's turned into an international icon, a hero of. I don't know if how you're aware you are of that from within Ukraine, but from outside, I mean, he's considered the greatest man in the world right now.
I will be honest, I haven't voted for Zelensky back in 2019. I haven't supported him much. I think before the war he did quite many diplomatic, political mistakes and quite many bad decisions. I mean, when it comes to internal policy, I think when during the elections he had his rating was 75%. It dropped down to 30% just before the war. But right now, even if if I'm the one who haven't voted for him and haven't supported him, I can say that yes, I'm proud of the president of Ukraine, the way he handles military and diplomatic sectors or vectors, the way he tries to communicate with parliaments of Western countries, with Western leaders, how simple, like in a simple language. He's being strict sometimes and direct. No time for diplomacy. And I think he finally and fully understood that he is responsible for the nation. He leads the nation, and people look up to him, and the same military looks up to him.
What can I'm trying to do my best here with telling these stories, because there's a lot of wars going on. There's of course the war on the field, but there's also the war of information and trying to get the truth out, And I want to make sure that before I say goodbye to you, that if there's any misconceptions that you might want to correct that, or just let people know before we say goodbye here. Maybe isn't getting out in the news in the way that it should.
It's probably everyone. I remember the President Zelensky first was asking to close the sky over Ukraine. Personally, me, I understand because I know what is NATO Article 5 and why it cannot be done. And
Mhm.
if they do it, it will be a precedent for the future. But we have been asking for so long for these fighter jets from the United States and from Poland. And I would like to say that we really desperately need those fighter jets to fight back in the sky, because we've received and keep receiving quite many weapons from Western countries, and I understand that they're trying to help us, but our weakest point is in the air, because Ukrainians, they do a good fight on the battlefield on the land, but we don't have so many fighter jets. We have very good pilots, but not fighter jets, and the ones that we have are very old, and these pilots, they very often keep risking their lives and safety just to save lives of civilians, of Ukrainians. So I think we should not forget. We should not let people forget that that the weapon that they are trying to deliver here will compensate for those fighter jets. We need to be able to fight back good in the air and to destroy Russians in the air. So that's my message.
And are the journalists still pouring in to tell this story, and you're helping them every day?
See, I'm reading the foreign media, and this story unfortunately somehow disappears from the headlines. And I understand that Western countries are trying to help us as much as they can by delivering other sorts of weapons,
Mm-hmm.
but they often forget that we need the good air defense.
The jets.
The jets, yes.
Wow. Well, Andriana, I really appreciate you taking the time to share with me your story, and I hope you stay safe. Are you traveling across the country, or are you pretty much staying in Lviv?
Right now, I stay in Lviv, but the first 5 days of the war, I was in Kiev, and I basically was awake when the first attacks in Kiev happened. 4 a.m. February 24th. I will never forget the sound and the date of those strikes.
Did you think it was going to happen, or were you still surprised?
No, I was, as probably 90% of people here, I was very surprised, because they've been talking about potential war, like months before it started. But we've all thought that it will start in the east and they will try to recapture Luhansk and Donetsk Oblast, but we would never ever think they would so suddenly invade the whole Ukraine.
Well, I think they thought they could, in a very bold strike, take over the capital and replace the government, and bingo, it's over. And they got a rude surprise. So,
Yes,
wow.
that's what I told you. They thought they would seize Kiev in like what, 3 or 4 days, and then the Russian military even brought with them the parade uniforms, because they expected that they would have a parade in Kiev
That's what
a
I
few
read.
days after
Yeah.
the war started.
Well, my wish is that that the Russians are expelled, and that the regime is replaced, and that reparations are paid, and that you and your countrymen have an opportunity to be free and reconstruct a happier future.
Yeah, I think we are already free. We will win no matter what takes. It's just pity it takes so many lives of civilians.
Right.
That's the hardest thing, I would say. But we are sure, we are determined to win. We will never, no one here will ever give up. There is no way back, as we say, and we think that Ukraine, after we win, will be even better and even more prosperous country.
Well, I believe that, and I'm going to pray for it as well. So, Andriana, I hope we can do this again, and you can provide maybe updates as you wish. And I want to just thank you for taking this time out of your busy day. And thankfully, I didn't hear any air raid sirens while we were doing this show, and hopefully there won't be many more. At least in Lviv. So just thanks for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope it will help. My message and this interview will help people to understand more of what is going on in Ukraine.
Well, one thing we got is or I got for sure talking to you is a deeper sense of the determination of yourself as an individual, but also of the Ukrainian people as well. So, that's an important measurement, just the determination of the people. So I'm getting that from you, and gee whiz, I wish you all the best. Thanks for taking time to share with me.
Thank you. Thank you.
So folks, you heard it direct from Andriana Zmysla from Lviv in Ukraine. I want to thank everybody for watching. Andriana, thanks again. Till next time, folks. Namaste, shalom, and aloha. By that, I mean namashaloha. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you.